Hello, friends and neighbors. I have a word for you today. He was talking to us.
Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us today for A Word for Wednesday. Always so good to have you with us. I really appreciate the comments, the texts, the emails, the calls. God bless you for letting us know that you take time to listen on Wednesdays or whenever you get a chance to listen to it. As I said, I'm talking today about He was talking to us. Who was talking to us? Jesus was talking to us. Some of his last words recorded after his death, burial, and resurrection. 40 days later was the ascension back into heaven, and Jesus spoke unto them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you alway, even to the end of the world. And I say to you, he was talking to us. Now, I've talked a lot about soul winning and God's mandate for the church to be evangelistic in nature, to be soul winners. YouTube, interestingly, lets you track everything. It doesn't tell you who's watching, but it tells you how many people clicked on your video and how many people watched your video, how many or how long the average watch time is. And when I do a video talking about winning souls, all those numbers go down. But I'm not going to stop talking about it just because the church doesn't want to hear it. We need the message, friend. It's God's will for us to have a missionary zeal. Now, does that mean a zeal to be a missionary on a foreign field? No. We ought to support foreign missions, but every church ought to be involved in some outreach. Now, I am very adamant in that every church has to find their place in outreach. For years, bus ministry was the thing, and bus ministry is a good thing. And people that really ran buses and really got a lot of people with buses oftentimes would look down their nose on people that weren't running buses. Get with the program. Look what we're doing. But I don't think that's the right attitude. Now, for years, Kelly and I have been sold on tent revivals. We love tent revivals. We have spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars doing tent revivals because we believe in it. That's our place in reaching souls. Not our only place, but the main place we focused on for years. I've never said to anybody, if you're not doing tent revival, you're not doing it right, because I don't believe that. Everyone must find their own place. People nowadays are doing peanut butter and jelly and Jesus, taking peanut butter and jelly sandwiches by the thousands to people that need it, and they're ministering to people. And I have talked to some people that are involved in programs like that say every church ought to be doing this. And maybe they should try it, but it's not every church's proper place in outreach. Others go to homeless missions. Some go to homeless people on the street and give them clothes. They have food banks and clothing banks and shoe banks and pass out hats and gloves in the wintertime and hot chocolate. Other people work in prisons, dealing with people who are lost in prisons, and that's their mission zeal. And they provide things for the prisoners and people coming out of prison. Other people are very involved in outreach to unwed mothers And some of them are involved in protesting at abortion clinics and also involved in unwed mother ministering to them. And that's their place that they have found to win people to Christ. And the list goes on and on and on. And we probably ought to think of about 1,000 more ways to do it. But the thing that I have said for years in pulpits all over this country, every church ought to be doing something. In fact, I have said every church that is not doing something is not doing much at all. If you've heard me preach much, you've heard me say those words. A church that's not doing something to win souls is not doing much at all. But I read of a man, his name was Dr. Maddry. I think I'm saying that right, Maddry. I think that is Charles Edward Maddry. He was a Baptist preacher, pastored all kinds of Baptist churches, and then was head of the Southern Baptist Missionary Department from 1921 to way up into the 40s or maybe into the 50s. He revolutionized their missions department for the first time since it began in the mid-1800s. The department was out of debt. It was $1 million in debt with no credit obtainable when he took the reins. He turned them around financially, spiritually, and in their format of missions, and did a great work. Probably a lot of people are in heaven today because of his efforts. And Dr. Maddry said this. Now, this is not me. I said if a church is not doing much to win the lost, or not doing anything to win the lost, some type of formal outreach, then they're not doing much. Here's what Dr. Maddry said. Buckle your seatbelt. Get your tray in the upright and locked position, because we're fixing to go for a ride here. Dr. Maddry said, no church that isn't interested in actively working to spread the gospel story or send the gospel story for people outside of their circle has no right to exist. Whew! Man, that's stout, Dr. Maddry. A church that isn't interested in actively, not just talking about it, not just having prayer requests, but actively interested in going to the lost, sending people to the lost, has no right to exist. That is tough stuff right there. He was preaching one time many years ago. He said one day a deacon where I was preaching in the state of North Carolina, which was his home state, took him on a buggy ride through a beautiful section of the country in North Carolina. Listen to this now. This is beautiful. As we came around a bend in the road, we came face to face with the most dilapidated church I have ever seen. It was obviously abandoned and unused and uncared for many years. He said the roof was swayed back like an old mule. Most of the shingles were missing from the roof. The shutters sagged on their hinges. The steps were broken. The paint was gone. The fence was half down. The gate leaned on one hinge. The yard was grown up as high as your head with weeds. He said it was a miserable sight. He said, I was half afraid to ask the driver of the buggy, my friend, what kind of church it was. He said, I was afraid he might say Baptist, because that's what Dr. Maddry was. And that's exactly what the driver said. Yes, it's a Baptist church. Dr. Maddry said, I blurted out, why don't you burn it down? This church is a disgrace. And the deacon answered with a smile. And he said, you don't understand, Dr. Maddry. That church preaches a sermon to us every day. We wouldn't burn it down for nothing. And then he said to Dr. Maddry, you have never preached a missionary sermon in your life. a soul-winning sermon in your life as powerful as that old run-down church preaches to us every single day. Just sit still a minute, and then you will understand. Dr. Maddry said we drove around some more bends and ups and downs, and then we came face to face with the most beautiful country church that I had ever seen. Its lawns were well kept, its fences were whitewashed, the shutters were green, the flowers bloomed around the whole front. He said that church was a dream. He said once more, I was afraid to ask this deacon what kind of church it was. He said, I was afraid he would say that it wasn't Baptist. I wanted this to be a Baptist church. And then the deacon spoke. He said, yes, this is a Baptist church. This is our Baptist church. And here's the reason why we won't burn the other one down. You see, we all used to worship in that old church. It was not dilapidated then. It was in good shape. And we got ourselves a new preacher. And that preacher began to preach missions, supporting foreign missions and winning souls and being a church alive, trying to win people to Christ with the gospel. His heart was on fire to send the gospel to dark lands around the world and right here in our community. And about half of us caught some of his zeal, and we wanted to win souls too. But the other half, they didn't want to be bothered with winning souls. They liked things the way they were. We've got a good church. We've got a good congregation. We've got a beautiful building. Everything's okay the way it is. So we realized there was a sharp dissension between us. So we had a meeting, and we decided we were not going to have a church fuss. We were not going to divide families. We were not going to get mad. We agreed that half of us that believed in missions and winning souls would find a piece of land in the community and build another building, and the preacher would go with us, and those that were left would get another preacher, and they could have the old church and give us nothing but the preacher and our right to go down in the community and start another church. And so they divided happily. They were not mad at each other. They would have two churches in the community. And so we came down here and we built this new church. And we started winning souls. We started pouring our money, our resources into foreign missions. And we started winning souls in our community and sending evangelists out to preach the gospel. And our church grew and grew and grew. And completely unplanned, one by one, the people from the other church that didn't want zeal for souls made their way down to our church. This new church that we built became the church. Eventually, all the people that stayed behind in the original church were now worshiping and zealous for souls in the new church because our church was alive. We discussed what should we do with the old building, and we decided to let the old building stand as a witness to the great truth that winning souls is a huge part of Christ's plan. And the church that doesn't believe it has no reason to live. Wow. When Christ said, "Go ye into all the world," saints of God, he was talking to us. He wasn't talking to 12 or to 70 or to the Christians of Jerusalem or the people of Judea or the Roman Empire. He was talking to me. He was talking to you. Let's go tell the story. And that's my word for Wednesday. I commit to seeing you next week. God bless you.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to mile markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.
Ciao for now.